I started teaching in the 1970s, an interesting time for anyone to start. As a young teacher in 1977, I think all the old lags in the staff room were very keen to offer you advice that generally centred around buying a belt. And of course, told you first buy a Lochgelly heavyweight belt. At the time, these were made by John J. Dick of Lochgelly, and mine cost me £3.80 in 1977. By the way, I actually sold my original belt on eBay about 15 years ago. I got 65 quid for it. And apparently, they're in high demand by people who are into sadomasochism. Well, they're welcome to it. I didn't have any other use for it. One of the tricks was to avoid actually using the belt, and you used to wear it over your shoulder, and any time the natives got a little bit restless, you just let your jacket slip a little bit to reveal the handle of the belt, and that would generally quieten everything down. You could also take it out from the jacket and lay it on the desk, and just the very fact that it was there had an impact. And a lot of the older teachers had all sorts of tricks to try and strike fear into the youngsters. These were two of the tricks that were shown to me by some of the older teachers. One was you drilled a hole in the teacher's desk and covered it with books, so that when you slid the books aside, you could just pretend that you were struggling to get a nail into the top of the desk, and then you ram a 6-inch nail in with your heavy-duty Lochgelly belt, and it would go all the way down through the desk. Now, obviously, you had to be fairly accurate, but that was quite an interesting sight to see. And of course, these days it probably make people faint. Another one that was used, the dramatic effect, was you could get a piece of chalk and put a needle in it and make it into something like an arrow, lots and lots of holes in it. And the kids, of course, didn't know that chalk had been dropped. You put the chalk, which was barely holding itself together, on the desk. And again, if you were accurate, you hit the chalk right in the middle, and it just exploded and sent dust throughout about half the classroom. In a sense, these were really to make the younger pupils be very wary of pushing you too far. I think one of the mistakes I learned early on was not to threaten to use it. Although, let's face it, if you have any sense, you certainly didn't want to use it. But as soon as you start to say, if you do X, you're going to get the belt, then the youngsters try to push you to that point, and then you're going to end up with belting someone you didn't really intend to, and certainly at a time when you didn't really want to. Now, I rarely used the belt. In fact, I disliked the handful of instances I used it over my years teaching. And I suppose 50% of the time you were pushed into using it through your inexperience, or because you had to step in and deal with the failings of another teacher. I was a head of department after 3 years teaching, and one of the jobs you had in those days is you then had to deal with your subordinates' classes when they got out of hand. And if you were stuck with weak or ineffectual teachers, the only way you could deal with things was to strike enough fear into their pupils that they didn't want sent to you every 5 minutes. And it wasn't just the belt you used to make that clear, but you basically imposed your personality on them, and you made it very, very clear that you did not want them to cross your path again. Other things you could do to avoid using the belt. Well, I always felt teaching is very much a performance, and if you're going to maintain control, you really have to be an excellent actor. You're putting in an Oscar-winning performance. every time you've got a class in there and you're entertaining them. So some of us like performing. It comes easier to us. I always try to entertain people and use humour to keep them interested. Of course, you have to assert your authority and presence in the classroom before you can do that. And presence is always so important. As a young teacher, I always tended to dress smartly. You have to look the part. I grew a full set, beard and moustache on a few occasions. A picture there to see what I looked like. This was an attempt to make me older and more fearsome. Although I've always been told I looked a lot older than my years anyway. I didn't really need to add a beard to it. But at any rate, presence is important in any job, and I think that's one of the things that you did. Eventually, well, the belt disappeared. Corporal punishment was banned in all Scottish state schools in 1987. Although there are a few local authorities had phased it out over the couple of years leading up to the final ban. Now, I was working in a very deprived area in Paisley at that time, Fergusley Park, which some of you may know of. And we decided, we could see things coming. We had to remove the belt early on, and in 1983 we removed the belt. And we spent a year working on an alternative system of behaviour management, which really involved a lot more paperwork, recording of indiscipline and updating parents on their kids. And it relied very heavily on the heads of the department to enforce that. But we had to teach teachers and pupils that there was going to be a new way of maintaining order in the classroom, and it was really led by the heads of department to try and make clear that this is the way things are going to be. Now, personally, I've always believed that we relied on fear far too long. And when I look at teachers that I have had under my control, over the last 25 years, certainly colleagues now are far, far more skilled at handling young people. There are a lot more interesting teachers in the classroom in many cases as well, and they maintain order and they provide that sort of learning environment that's really important for youngsters. So, yeah, I don't regret the demise of the belt. In fact, in many ways, I wish it hadn't been around when I started teaching. I mean, Scotland and the UK as a whole was really quite late on in abolishing the belt. Many countries had got rid of it almost 100 years before we had. And all it did is it propped up teachers that should never have been in the classroom.